Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Stan Landfair. I'm the president of the Nob Hill Association. Welcome to our candidates night. We are gathering this evening by Zoom to allow all four candidates for the Board of Supervisors from District 3 to present themselves to the voters and to get to know the voters better. We won't tarry long with introductions, but we have some to make, and there's some thanks and acknowledgements we need to make also. First, to the Nob Hill Association. The NHA is the oldest neighborhood association in San Francisco, founded in 1928. It was dedicated to the preservation and improvement of our historic neighborhood in Huntington Park. We're proud to be members, and we thank the NHA for its role in protecting our neighborhood. The University Club of San Francisco, an historic gathering place for cultural and intellectual life and fitness. And finally, the California Masonic Memorial Temple. The Masonic, as we know it, is the state headquarters for the Masons of California and their charitable organizations which support memory care and nursing homes for seniors. The Masonic is a center for cultural, education, and entertainment in the heart of San Francisco. Thank you specifically to Jordan Yelenek from the Masonic, who's running our meeting tonight. And I see Alan Casalou, the director of the Masonic, in our virtual audience. Thank you, Alan, for your support. Likewise, I see Al Knoll, my counterpart from the University Club out there. Thank you for your support tonight, Al. Our moderator this evening is Philip Young, President and CEO of WorldAffairs. Headquartered in San Francisco, WorldAffairs is known for the popular weekly radio show on KQED entitled, appropriately enough, WorldAffairs. Philip's a frequent host and interviewer on WorldAffairs. He's held a series of positions in the State Department, and he's traveled on behalf of the government to North Korea, South Korea, other parts of Asia. So he's accustomed to hearty debate, and we're very grateful to Philip for moderating tonight. In return for lending us Philip's services, we've promised WorldAffairs the opportunity to make public service announcement to be delivered by Philip right now.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you. Normally, I do a lot of international work and focus my life on international affairs in Asia. But I have to say that more and more these days, with all the stuff that's going on in Washington and the gridlock, I believe the most important thing these days in terms of having an effect in the world is really having an impact here at home. And that's why I agreed to and was very much looking forward to hosting this particular debate, this Meet the Candidates evening, because this is all about local action, which I think is increasingly in this world going to be ever more important. The public service announcement is I'm the head and president of the CEO of WorldAffairs. We're a public forum. We're going to be having a global awards evening on November 18th. That's a Wednesday, and we're going to give Global Citizens Award on climate change to 3 individuals. The first one is going to be Governor Jerry Brown from the public sector. Obviously, he's been doing so much to make climate change a big #1 priority. We have Marcy Frost, who is the CEO of CalPERS, and she's sort of the business person. And then we have a climate activist, world-renowned oceanographer named Sylvia Earle. So in our view, to deal with the climate change problem on such a scale, we're going to need government, we're going to need the private sector, and we're going to need the nonprofit sector working together. So I hope that you will be able to attend with us virtually. If you have any questions and would like to, go to worldaffairs.org. Again, it is on November 18th. I believe it starts about 6:30 and will be for about an hour, hour and a half. So please join us. If you have any questions, you can always contact us at WorldAffairs. So Stan?
Thank you, Philip. And before we get to the program, Al, is there anything you wanted to say on behalf of the University Club for the event Wednesday? We need you to plug in.
Unmute.
Barbara Creed at noon on Zoom is making a presentation on the United States Supreme Court. Interesting cases in the 2020-2021 year. A brief chat about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and then comments on the implication of the forthcoming election. So join us if you can. It's free.
Thank you, Al. Well, we're now ready for the main event. And let me turn this over to Philip.
All right, great. So why don't we get started? We have, by my calculations, about 80 minutes. And we're going to have a conversation or actually meet the candidates. We have Aaron Peskin, who is a longtime neighborhood advocate, the founder of a environmental nonprofit, and currently the supervisor of District 3. We have Danny Sauter. He's the executive director of the nonprofit Neighborhood Centers. We have Lulu Schwartz. Lulu has a career that includes 10 years as a San Francisco Chronicle crime reporter and has done extensive work on international human rights issues. And then we have Spencer Simonsen, and his background has been to focus on our communities through low income financing, legal aid nonprofits, and now senior citizen services. So with that, let me tell you what our format is going to be. We decided this was not going to be really a debate, but really an opportunity for all of you to hear these candidates. We understood that a lot of these candidates know each other and they've seen each other a lot over the last several weeks, but we know that many of you may not know them. So what we wanted to do was create this space where you could hear what they have to say. So from the outset, we wanted to make sure the format. So what we're going to do is we're going to have them each introduce themselves. And we've asked them to say a fact about them that you might not know. We're going to give them 3 minutes to introduce themselves. Then we have a series of 4 other questions that have to do with a lot of different issues here in the city. And we've asked them then to each talk about 2 minutes. And then what we're going to do by the timing that we've calculated, we think we're going to have a little over 30 minutes for all of you to ask questions. Now, my understanding is for purposes of this debate, Meet the Candidates tonight, we'd like everyone who is not speaking to put their microphones on mute. Please do that. And we want to make sure that if you have a question, please use the Q&A function, and I will grab them as we go. Maybe there'll be an opportunity for me to insert that, or again, what we do is at the end towards the 55-minute mark or so, we'll have about a half an hour for all of you to ask questions directly to these candidates. So with that, what we did is, I don't have the bowl, but we actually had a hat and we put their names in, and we did it by lottery to who is going to be speaking first. And so by luck of the draw, we are going to go first with Spencer. Spencer, are you there? Spencer?
Hi, yeah. Thank you, Philip. And I want to thank Stan, you as well, and the Nob Hill Association here for putting on this tonight, as well as the other organizations that are helping out. My name is Spencer Simonsen. I'm running to be District 3's next supervisor. My background is a little bit different than the other candidates currently today. My background has been in low-income financing, in legal aid and legal services, and senior and disability services here in San Francisco. And so while I was in low-income financing, we helped provide hundreds of thousands of individuals the ability to cover day-to-day expenses. I was also in legal aid and legal services here in San Francisco, working with local nonprofits. While doing that, we helped thousands of San Francisco residents from being evicted and with other legal matters that they could not generally afford to go through litigation with. And now I'm currently in senior services and disability services. And through that, I've actually helped deliver over 1,800 meals per day to seniors impacted by COVID here in the Bay Area. And so we provided transportation to seniors, meals to seniors, as well as groceries to seniors, which has been critically important, especially with COVID nowadays. And so those are the perspectives and the viewpoints that I want to bring to City Hall. My perspective and my ideas really are about putting our outcomes first and making sure that we're building solutions that actually are impactful here in San Francisco. all of those three areas that I've worked in have huge populations of homeless individuals. And so it's really about knowing each individual piece of the puzzle to actually solve our homelessness issue. One interesting fact that I was asked to share here is my great uncle, my grandfather's brother, was actually Wood Moy, and he was a famous movie star here in San Francisco, actually, a Chinese movie star. And they filmed some of his movies in Chinatown here in San Francisco. One of the films that he was in was called Chan is Missing, also filmed here in San Francisco. And it was a famous Wayne Wang film, the first actually Chinese American film that was distributed outside of the Chinese American community here in the US.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Simon. I didn't realize that. That's cool. Chan is Missing. Very nice. Okay. So next we have Lulu Schwartz. Please give us an introduction. Tell us something a little bit about yourself that we didn't know.
Okay, can you see me?
Yep, we can.
Am I visible?
Yes, you are.
Well, I suppose the thing that you would know about me is that my father, Horace Schwartz, who was a bookseller here in San Francisco, was a member of the Beat Generation Circle. He was the second publisher of Lawrence Ferlinghetti, the poet, and was involved in the City Lights bookstore. What can I say about myself? I grew up wanting to be a writer. I became a writer, became a journalist. Worked for 10 years as a crime reporter at the San Francisco Chronicle. Have published 33 books in 10 languages. It's a little strange for me as a transgender person in that a lot of that now looks to me as something I did when I really wasn't clear about who I am. Now I'm writing 2 new books, one of which I have a contract for on the history of the Democratic Party left in San Francisco. Traveled a lot around the world, been involved in many causes. I've always been committed to social justice. As far as the 3 issues that I've been stressing to people, the first is that we need to kickstart our business community. We have a city here that is very dependent on entertainment, restaurants, and tourism, and the virus has destroyed that economic base, and we have to recreate that economic base very rapidly by what I call shock therapy. The second is homelessness, and I have what I think is a rather new conception of homelessness. I know a great number of homeless people as a transgender and as a transgender activist. I'm in the Tenderloin a lot. I know a lot of very vulnerable young trans women who are homeless. I know a lot about what goes on in the so-called navigation centers. And I am calling for opportunities using the kind of loans I think Mr. Simonsen was involved with, which are called, which in my day were called Grameen Bank loans. Small loans and grants to homeless people to start cooperatives. Many, many homeless people, in fact, were productive members of society before they became homeless. So I would like to suggest that we can do a lot to resolve the homeless issue by encouraging homeless people to form economic cooperatives in which they can create income for themselves. Let's see, policing. I formed an informal commission of police officers in Central Station and Tenderloin Station. I saw the head of the group today, who's an officer at Central Station. And my idea is to ask the officers themselves to develop proposals on how we reform policing. I see I don't have much time left. I could also talk about my vision for the Embarcadero. That is, I want the Embarcadero to become a world-class tourist site like the Port of Barcelona and the Port of Genoa. Bottom line is this: we can be a European-style city. I don't mean that ethnically. We can be a city like Barcelona, like Amsterdam. I spent a lot of time in Amsterdam. We can be a city in which conservative money and radical culture are united for the betterment of our community. That's my vision.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we will be talking about all those issues in a few moments specifically, but I appreciate, let's go then to Aaron Peskin, please.
I will unmute. That is the
Yes.
bane of my existence. Good evening. I am Supervisor Aaron Peskin, and thank you so much to the Nob Hill Association and the University Club and the Masonic Temple for this forum, and to all of you for attending this evening. And I also just want to thank everybody for your patience and compassion and just hanging in there during this incredibly tough year of the pandemic. But we'll get a little bit more to that later. This is our fourth public event together as candidates, and we've done several other meetings at the Chronicle and the Examiner. So I really appreciate the format that Mr. Young suggested to the candidates, and we'll have plenty of time for the public policy. But I wanted to start by telling you a little bit about myself, starting at the beginning. I was born across the bay in Berkeley in 1964 and went to Berkeley public schools through high school, including, believe it or not, 4 years, kindergarten through 4th grade with Kamala Harris of all things. My mother is a first-generation immigrant and became a social worker who ran the East Oakland Youth and Family Center. And my father taught psychology at San Francisco State for over 40 years. For myself, right when I got out of college, UC Santa Cruz, I went to work at the Trust for Public Land in downtown San Francisco, a nonprofit environmental organization that buys land for open space and parks. Long story short, I fell in love with my now wife on a trek in Nepal and moved in with her to her North Beach flat 31 years ago. I also fell in love with San Francisco and my neighborhoods of Telegraph Hill and North Beach, and believe it or not, got involved in a tree planting campaign that ultimately led to my becoming president of the Nob Hill Association's sister organization, the Telegraph Hill Dwellers. And in the year 2000, I ran for supervisor with a slate of candidates who sought to keep then omnipotent Mayor Willie Brown accountable, and lo and behold, I won. And I spent the next 8 years as a member of the board, 4 of them as the president of the board, unanimously elected by my colleagues, and then went on to chair the San Francisco Democratic Party for 4 years and returned to my job as the executive director of another nonprofit, Great Basin Land and Water, an environmental organization that buys water rights to improve water quality on rivers, mostly on behalf of Indian tribes in Nevada. And then in 2015, I ran again for the Board of Supervisors and have served since, and am the board's most prolific legislator. I am chair of the County Transportation Authority, a member of the Bay Conservation and Development Commission that keeps the health and quality of the Bay intact, and served for over 2 years on the California Coastal Commission. Little known facts, Philip, I rode my bicycle from coast to coast in 53 days, hardly a world record. I've walked the John Muir Trail, all 218 miles of it, with my wife twice. What else? Like you, Philip, I've spent a lot of time in Asia, over a year in South Asia, primarily in India. That's a little bit about me, and we'll get to the policy a little bit later, and I humbly seek your vote for re-election.
Thank you very much. Danny, you were the last one for a round of introductions.
Yes, thank you, Philip. Thank you, Stan, and thanks to all the hosts tonight. Really happy to be here with you. My name is Danny Sauter, and I am running for District 3 Supervisor. My background is in our neighborhoods. I've spent the last 4 years as the president of North Beach Neighbors, one of our neighborhood associations, founded in 1981. And there, I've worked with neighbors to win grants for small businesses, to start a community farmers market, and during COVID, worked with my neighbors to start North Beach Delivers, which is a volunteer program that has now raised over $100,000 for our neighborhood restaurants. And every day I work as the executive director of Neighborhood Centers Together, which is a nonprofit network of our community centers across San Francisco, including 2 here in District 3, Cameron House in Chinatown and Tel High Neighborhood Center in North Beach. And these are our neighborhood centers that serve seniors, immigrants, and children. And I just want to share one of the best parts for me on this campaign so far. It's been meeting new neighbors. And one of the highlights was in this past week when a woman named Linda, who's a resident and neighbor in Lower Nob Hill, invited me for a walk around her neighborhood. And it was a wonderful walk this past Saturday, and a beautiful walk. But we also kept walking past stores that are emptying out. We kept walking past folks who are suffering on our streets. And on every block, as you can imagine, we had to watch our step to make sure that we didn't step in something. And as Linda and I walked around, the word that we kept coming back to was potential. There's such potential in this neighborhood if we just do the work and give our neighborhood a little TLC. And this is why I'm running, to make sure that our neighborhoods reach their full potential. That's what I think is on the line in this election. The question of if we want the next 4 years to look different than the last 4, that's what I'm going to City Hall to fight for and win for our neighborhoods. And it's why we've been endorsed by groups like the Chinese American Democratic Club, the United Democratic Club, the San Francisco Renters Alliance, Eastern Neighborhoods Democratic Club, and many more. On my fun fact, my fun fact is that I'm a newlywed, and the funny story there is that all along with this campaign taking up so much time, I've been promising my wife, that the honeymoon will happen in November. We'll take care of the honeymoon in November, and then along comes a global pandemic to prevent that. So we'll figure that out. But that's my fun fact.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Okay. Well, we have the second set of questions, and I know that being a supervisor is not an easy position. You're getting pulled in so many different directions. So we've gotten a sense of, for all of you, who you are. But I think one of the questions that is the most basic, and I know, Danny, you alluded to this, and I'm sure there are other reasons. I think it would be great to hear from all of you, why are you running? Why are you deciding to run right now? And for Aaron in particular, why do you want to be reelected? So for this set of questions, we're going to start off with Lulu. Lulu, why don't you go ahead and start off? Why are you running? You're on mute, unmute.
I'm running for this office because this is the first time I've ever run for elective office. And by the way, I do want to note, Mr. Peskin said there had been 4 meetings. I've only been included in 2 of them. That's neither here nor there at this point. I'm running for this office because I'm a child of North Beach. I know North Beach. I've written a lot, published a lot about North Beach. I love North Beach and Telegraph Hill, and I love the whole city, frankly. And I think that I can bring a new vision, a new attitude, and above all, a commitment to planning. I think we need long-range planning in this city. We have all of these problems but we don't have plans to resolve them. I mean, it's all well and good to say that it's unfortunate to walk around the streets and the streets are littered with, human waste, and they're littered with needles, and they're littered with garbage. We need a plan. We need a real serious long-range plan to make this city the kind of city we want to live in. What is the kind of city I think we want to live in? I lived in Washington for 10 years, and I spent a lot of time in Amsterdam. I look at Amsterdam, that's a city where the owner of an expensive property can make good money on that property, but they have world-class public housing. There's a sense in that city of the unity of all elements in the city. One thing I say is no bird flies with one wing. That's why I say, if we can bring together the money, which is conservative money, the ideas, which are radical ideas, bring them together for the unity and betterment of our community. I think we can make this a European-style city, not in an ethnic sense. Make it like Amsterdam, like Barcelona, like Genova, like all of these other great cities in Europe that manage to be magnificent places for their people to live, are tourist attractions that will never fade, and that are rich. That's the main thing. Frankly, I want to see us all get rich here. I don't want to sound like Trump. I want to see us all do better, have better jobs, make more money, start new businesses, and basically live a better life. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Aaron, you're the incumbent, and why are you deciding that you want to continue?
Well, Philip, I struggled with that. And when the pandemic hit, it made my choice a lot easier. Simply put, I think we really need tested, experienced leadership to help us get through and recover from this once in 100-year event and all of its impacts, economic impacts, social impacts, impacts to equity that have been magnified by the pandemic, and of course, health impacts. And I've learned a little bit about city government along the way over these last 20 years. And I really feel a calling to harness that knowledge, that experience, the relationships that I have fostered to help steer our recovery. And we face a starkly different world than we did 4 years ago. 4 years ago, we set out to make the city and district more livable and affordable. And indeed, we created and preserved thousands of units of affordable housing in this district and across the city. We revitalized parks like Washington Square and Willy Woo Woo Wong and Huntington Park, and rolled out big belly trash cans and staffed public bathrooms. We pioneered a first in the state fee on rideshare to fund pedestrian safety improvements in Muni. But all of that changed when the pandemic hit, when we had to issue a shelter-in-place order. Homeless shelters were closed, schools were closed, businesses were shuttered, and we went into lockdown. And I immediately started working very closely with the mayor and city leaders at our Emergency Operations Center to craft our response, which has frankly been rated one of the best in the state and the country. We immediately banned residential and commercial evictions to safeguard tenants who couldn't pay rent due to the coronavirus, including a large number of District 3 folks living on fixed incomes and recently unemployed. And when our homeless shelters emptied out, encampments began to grow in the lower Polk alleyways. In particular, we moved to help residents into hotels and now into housing, and work to take drug dealers off the streets. And while the federal government has denied us some of the most basic resources, we work to keep our district safe by expanding testing in places like Chinatown and the Tenderloin for COVID. And as a result of our collective work, San Francisco's response, as I said, has been rated one of the best in the country, if not the world. There's a lot more I can add, but I think our next question is going to give me an opportunity to do that. But I just want to say, step by step, we're coming back, but it's clear this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I'm running for re-election because I know what it takes to bring the city back. And I've demonstrated that I do go the extra miles to fight for our community. And we'll do that in the days and weeks and months and 4 years ahead if I'm given another term.
Okay, thank you. So Danny, you already mentioned one reason for why you decided to run. Can you, if you want to elaborate on that, but I'm sure there are other reasons that have sort of spurred you to do that. So you've got 2 minutes as well.
Of course, yeah, thank you. And I really see this as an extension of the work that I've started in my own neighborhood. And I, through my work with my neighborhood association, have just been so excited about the promise and the power of organizing with neighbors and what you can get done when you band together, when you roll up your sleeves and fight for the change you want to see in your neighborhood. That's what we've started over these last number of years. And now I want to do that in an incredibly important moment for all of District 3. I love all of District 3, whether that's Nob Hill, whether that's North Beach, whether that's Russian Hill. But I think that part of loving something is realizing its faults and going to bat for those faults. And I think we're in a moment right now. 1% in the last 5 years in our district.
Okay.
Storefront vacancies in neighborhoods like North Beach were at 20% before the pandemic hit. And City Hall has been rocked by corruption. Meanwhile, our streets have not been getting any cleaner. And I think this is a moment for a fresh start. I think this is a moment that calls for a plan and a vision for our neighborhoods and for someone to put forward that plan. And that's what I look forward to speaking about tonight.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So Spencer, why did you decide to run?
I'm running because District 3 and Nob Hill is my home. And I've been given the opportunity to walk around our neighborhoods and walk through our cities, and I've seen the crisis that we continue to have on the streets, even through COVID-19. I've seen some printed material from Mr. Aaron Peskin saying that our streets are cleaner under him. I cannot think of a single business owner or a single resident who I've talked to who said that they're happy with the states of our streets and that they're cleaner. And so I'm running to actually solve and resolve those issues. I'm running because Aaron Peskin has had 20 years to resolve these issues, and we're still having major issues on our streets. Again, my background is in actually building solutions and bringing them to fruition to help our residents. And so I'm knowledgeable about how we can put these resources to work in our city to actually have the outcomes, to have fewer people struggling with homelessness, to have fewer people struggling with the drug crisis on our streets here in San Francisco. I think we need a new perspective at City Hall. We need some major changes at City Hall. And I think San Francisco residents really, really want to see this, and they want to see it yesterday. And so that's the main reason I'm running for supervisor, because I want to see our streets, our neighborhoods, and our businesses and residents. I want to see them not only survive through COVID, but thrive after COVID. And that's going to be critical, because after COVID, we're going to have a decrease in the tax basis here in San Francisco. We're going to have fewer small businesses, and we're going to see them continue to struggle. And it's up to San Francisco, and it's up to our supervisors in City Hall to make sure that we get the resources necessary out to people, while also knowing that we're going to have a lower tax basis and less resources available.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we are going, let's see, we're going to start these next series of questions with Aaron. So I thought what we talked about, you introduce why you're running. I thought big picture, and then we'll get to the next series of more specific questions. But, in this time of COVID-19 and things of what's happening, I mean, we've got this economic downturn. We'll talk about those, but I think it might be good to hear from people. What is your vision for the city? We're going through a lot of change right now. A lot of change is happening because of COVID-19. We have, people protesting out in the streets, and we have an economic downturn. So what do you, when you think about San Francisco, what is it that you want it to become, or what do you, what's your vision for your time for the city itself?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Philip. And obviously, we all want to address the ills and challenges of our day, whether it's homelessness and equally important climate change. And that's precisely what I've been doing. And my vision is actually in many ways expressed on the November ballot, which I had a large hand in creating together with the mayor and my colleagues, which went through a rigorous vetting process. From some of the issues that we've just talked about, cleaning our streets in a way that can be more efficient. And that is on the ballot as Proposition B, rooting out public corruption by having proper oversight. I am the author of the Government Oversight Committee, but Proposition B as well creates more oversight and cleaner streets. As it relates to the issues that we've seen with civil unrest and the need for law enforcement reform, that is expressed on this ballot in two measures that I helped craft and am a sponsor of, Propositions D and E, to honoring and celebrating the contributions and future contributions of our immigrant community and our young folks, to allow them to advise us on city issues. And that's on the ballot in Propositions C and G. But most fundamentally important is our tax structure. And I have hundreds of hours into a truly collaborative process in the forming of Proposition F to reform our tax system, not only to be more equitable and fair for working people, but to give relief during COVID to our small businesses and cost-sensitive industries. So that is my vision. But fundamentally, I'm there to work for the people of my district and this city. And that's what my team and I do. And we do it tirelessly. We do it on weekends. We do it on evenings. We respond to all of our emails, or almost all of our emails. And we help our constituents with constituent services, big and small. And that continues to be part of my vision going forward.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Danny, so tell us your vision for the city.
Yeah, well, I spoke about potential earlier, and my vision, particularly for Nob Hill, is really to work with the neighbors to realize that vision. And so for me, I think of things like the Downtown Streets team, which is a fantastic program that exists in many cities around cities around the Bay Area and in San Francisco, but is not yet in our District 3 neighborhoods. And that is a street cleaning program that provides low barrier entry work for formerly homeless. It pairs that with shelter, and it actually beautifies our neighborhoods. You know, working to expand programs like that and starting them here in Nob Hill and Lower Nob Hill, I think that's a good place to start. It also means open space. You know, we all love Huntington Park. It is such an incredible gathering place and has such history, but we need more open space than that. And in this pandemic, we've seen other districts and other parts of San Francisco really give the streets back to the people. We haven't done that in the same way here in District 3, and certainly not in Nob Hill. So that's something that we should do at least temporarily, if not long term. And it also comes down to the funding that we fight for our neighborhoods and for our district every day. You know, when I think of the fact that District 3 has the highest percentage of older adults in any district in San Francisco, and yet our funding for our senior programs are just half what the average funding is for another district, that worries me, and that's something I want to change. You know, when we think about the fact that we have this massive $12 billion budget, and yet our neighbors don't have a say in what happens there. Programs like participatory budgeting that let individuals actually give feedback and actually have a say in how the budget is crafted in their own neighborhoods, those are the sorts of programs that I'll go to bat for.
Okay, thank you. All right, Spencer? Vision for the city. I think you're on mute. Go ahead.
Yeah, my vision for San Francisco is having a city that actually addresses our homelessness crisis and a lot of the other crises that we're going through head on. You know, in 2019, we had hundreds of individuals, homeless individuals, die on our streets in San Francisco. And that's just not acceptable for a first-class city like San Francisco. I am looking to have a city where we have housing that's affordable to everyone, that's affordable to the restaurant workers, to the service workers, to retail individuals, to our transit and bus drivers, you know, to our first responders as well. And making sure that we can build that housing and provide it to them. You know, I'm looking for a city that has an amazing and diverse small business population, that we have businesses that represent all aspects and backgrounds of the individuals living in San Francisco, of which we have a huge diversity of. We need to have a fair playing field for individuals in San Francisco and our residents. It can't just be the rich who are looked out for in San Francisco. We need to be looking out for the people who are middle class, the people who are lower income, and everywhere in between. City Hall needs to be working for San Francisco business owners. City Hall needs to be working for San Francisco residents. They don't need to be working against the people in San Francisco. And so that's something that I want to see City Hall stepping out and proactively building out solutions that are going to help our businesses and going to help our residents, especially post-COVID.
Okay, thank you. So Lulu, you started out with actually kind of a vision as well. You were talking about how you were talking about San Francisco as a European city. Why don't you elaborate on that and tell us a little bit more, and if there's anything else that you want to discuss about where you think San Francisco should go and what it should become. Is she there? You're on mute. There we go.
Okay, thank you. You know, as I think about it, I guess European is not really the word I want. The word I want is cosmopolitan. And I'm not playing to you personally, but I've been around the world twice as a journalist. Another city that I think is very well run is Seoul, Korea. Very large city. When I walk out at Seoul, Korea at night, the noise of the city is so intense that it's like daytime. At the same time, it's not a city where a lot of people speak English. If you're going to go and visit Seoul, you have to be prepared to adapt. That's neither here nor there. The point is, these cities I'm talking about, Amsterdam, Barcelona, Seoul, and there are many other cities around the world. They're not broken down. They're not shabby. They're not a shadow of their former self. You know, all those people all over the country and all over the world who come to this city expecting a magical experience, I don't know what happens to them. Maybe they do have a magical experience. They go to Fisherman's Wharf and they have a seafood salad that's out of this world, the famous cliche, all that kind of stuff. I want more. I want a city that is architecturally at the top level, educationally at the top level. One of the things I've called for is a publicly funded Mandarin language high school. I'd like to also see a publicly funded Spanish language high school. And here's something that will, I don't know how people will react to this. I'd like to see our city sponsor a world-class soccer team. We have a lot of soccer players in the city. I see no reason at all that our city can't take its place as a world-class city, which it was in the past and could be again. Oh, one other thing. I got a question asking if anybody's going to talk about the mayor's salary. The mayor is now the most highly paid mayor in the United States of America. I cannot believe that Bill Blasio or Mr. Garcetti are facing smaller changes than the mayor of the city. The idea that the mayor of the city is grossly overpaid is to me absurd. It's time to reform a lot of these practices in city government.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have the next round of questions. So this has to do with COVID-19, but not quite what maybe people are maybe thinking about. I think this wants to be a little bit more personal for all of you. Wondering, how has COVID-19 affected you personally, and how you see the city, and how you see your existence and your everyday lives now that most of us are sheltering in? I think, all of us are doing our own version of that, where we're either working from home or we're essential workers and we have to go out and actually do this in places that are at risk. How are you spending this time right now, and how are you dealing with it? And I think people would like to know that. And so we will start off with Danny on this one.
Yeah, thank you, Philip. And it, goodness, what a year it's been. On a personal level, I have felt so fortunate this year to be healthy, to have such loved ones around me. I've also felt fortunate to be in this city. All of us, wherever we are, we've spent a lot more time at home, a lot more time in our own neighborhoods. And, if you're going to be anywhere, how lucky we are to be in San Francisco. And, the simple things like a good walk, or the simple things like, seeing a business that had been closed open back up, those, I think, all of those experiences have just made me more resolved to keep working in public service here in San Francisco. And on the campaign, we've really shifted to the moment too. In the spring, we dropped all our campaign activities and we did thousands of phone calls to seniors, just wellness checks, and really spent one-on-one time with so many individuals as they were trying to figure out, which grocery store near them did senior hours, or which department they should be calling for a certain benefit or a certain question. So it's really been, I think, a moment when I've been so happy with how San Francisco has come together.
Okay, thank you. Spencer.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. It's not a common question. I know a lot of people have really struggled with COVID. And I think I'm definitely in one of those groups. I think most people don't know, but I'm actually a type 1 diabetic, as well as an asthmatic. And so that's made it especially difficult. And so I can definitely relate to a lot of individuals, especially seniors and other individuals with disabilities here in San Francisco, because those are a lot of the people, just like myself, who are staying in, who still can't necessarily go out and dine on the streets, or take those additional risks. And so as far as me personally, I've been staying in mainly because of the type 1 diabetes, which is a really big struggle there. It's been difficult to see our small businesses closing in the neighborhood. That's been very difficult. I know it's been difficult on a lot of residents to see some of those places that have been around 30 to 40 years, that are institutions in our neighborhoods, just kind of close just overnight. And so that's been a real struggle, seeing that day in and day out, and hearing about that, not only from District 3, but from other areas of San Francisco. As Danny said, I'm really happy to see a lot of our community members start to get together and work on their neighborhoods and work on creating those shared spaces, whether that be, the little parklets that are going up, which are amazing to see, or the Slow Streets program that's being put up in certain areas of San Francisco. And so to see all that, it makes me, and I'm sure it makes others, realize that, hey, this is just the start of San Francisco coming back and reviving and, coming out from the ashes, just as we always do, just like the phoenix is reborn from the ashes. And so even though there's been a struggle, I'm happy to see that San Francisco should continue to move in the right direction for the future.
Okay, thank you. Lulu, wanted to know, how are you personally coping with COVID-19 and how has it affected you?
Well, I know people that have gotten sick from it. And of course, I'm staying in. I'm wearing the mask. I don't mean to be frivolous about this, but for a transgender who works a lot on her lipstick, wearing the mask is a little bit of a cramp on my style. But I understand the mask. The mask is our social and civic responsibility. I get tested a lot. Most transgenders in this city have pretty good health care, but I certainly do not want to be a person who disregards the health requirements of our community. Otherwise, I'm grateful for the rent eviction moratorium, but I have to say something honestly. I don't think that the city's administration did very well with this. I mean, as a transgender who spends a lot of time in the Tenderloin, I think the first response of shoving people into tents in the Tenderloin, frankly, is criminal. I think the problem with the city is, as I've said, I think previously today, too much improvisation, too much lack of planning. We should have had a plan in place for a disaster, because that's what this is. Secondly, or further and more importantly for me, the virus has devastated our economy. It has devastated our economy. We need to kickstart our economy. One thing I call for is a moratorium on bureaucracy and issuing beer and wine licenses. I'd like to see a situation where to get a beer and wine license and open a restaurant, all you need to do is put in a postcard with your name, your bank name, insurance company name, get it notarized, and pay a $100 fee. I want this city to support the small businesses, reopen the businesses. I walk around North Beach every day and I see empty stores. We saw a lot of them before the virus, but I think this is our time to kickstart our business community, to give our small business every possibility, every aid, every support they need to get this city back operating as a tourist attraction, a good tourist attraction, a high quality tourist attraction, a city where everybody knows it's a city where we all eat well. I want to see that reborn. I want to see it revived. I want to see business, frankly, roaring. I want to see the small business people getting out, opening their new businesses, and creating once again a city that is a world-class city that everybody in the world wants to at least visit once, and many people will want to live in.
Okay. Aaron,
Do I have
please.
more
go ahead.
time?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I think Lulu may have just said something.
I'm sorry, Lulu?
I just asked if I had more time.
Oh, no, we're all set. Okay, you're all set.
Okay.
Aaron, go ahead.
Philip, there is no school, there is nothing that could prepare any of us for this pandemic. I mean, it's very interesting. I have spent an incredible amount of time on earthquake preparedness, on the seawall bond to deal with climate change and sea level rise. But the lessons of the 1918 pandemic were lost to our entire society, to this city, to many of our health professionals, to the CDC, clearly to the Trump administration. And I mean, the beginning of this was very, very difficult for all of us. I mean, I think we've all come to live with the new and ever-changing new normal. But I haven't had a lot of time to think about it. We've just been working our behinds off. I mean, whether it was canceling our summer recess, no big deal, dealing with individual eviction cases, worrying a lot about our kids and doing something about it relative to opening up learning hubs at the Betty Ann Chinese Rec Center and at the YMCA. The work has been just absolutely endless. Starting at the Emergency Operations Center, where I was the first supervisor to go to the Emergency Operations Center and work there literally 12 and 14 hours a day at the beginning of the pandemic, as we were learning to build the plane, as we were learning to fly the plane. I guess from a personal perspective, to answer your question, Philip, it reminds me that I got lucky in marriage, because sheltering in place with my wife has been a pleasure almost the entire time. And it reminds me that I have 4 of the most incredible staff that any supervisor could want to have, because they have, as I have at personal risk, gone out and distributed tens of thousands of masks in Chinatown and throughout the district. That's the kind of work that we've been doing. And I fundamentally believe that San Franciscans are resilient. San Francisco clearly is resilient. And together we're going to get out of this thing, but it's been tough on all of us.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, so just a reminder to our listeners, we have one sort of set question here, which is rather open-ended. And then if you have specific questions, please feel free to type them in, and then I will go ahead and use them and ask with the remainder time that we have. So this is gonna be fairly open-ended. I mean, there are so many issues here in the city that you've all referred to. And, you know, we can talk about public transit, we can talk about affordable housing, we talked about homelessness, we talked about business, we talked about COVID-19, and, you know, and there's also crime and the police. So, you know, you only got so much time. One of the things I learned when I was in government is the most important commodity any public official has is their time. And so with limited amount of time, can you tell us, you know, if you are elected, what is it that you're going to spend your time most on moving forward? And so with this, we are going to start with Spencer.
Yeah, so the thing that I'll spend most of my time on is working with City Hall and working with partnerships with our companies in San Francisco, as well as our local resources, whether that be resources for homelessness, whether that be legal aid resources, or other organizations here in San Francisco. I think one of the things that we continually see here in San Francisco is that we do not reach out, and City Hall does not reach out enough to these different resources. We have some of the most amazing resources here in San Francisco. We have some of the most amazing companies. We have some of the most amazing arts resources here as well. And we don't actually make good use of them. And so again, I think that's something that in the near future after COVID, we need to do a much, much better job at. One example that I can give you is that being able to deliver meals through just our restaurants here in San Francisco, that's a critical piece of the puzzle there. And I would also suggest that although we have a lot of different specific issues in San Francisco, it's not really about the issue of addressing those issues specifically, but it's about addressing how we address those issues. And so we consistently see here in San Francisco that to address those issues, we put in more and more money in order to do that. We raise the taxes on our businesses, we raise sales taxes. And instead of doing that, we need to be optimizing how we're using the resources, because we are not going to have the same level of resources as we've had in the past. And we've had a lot of resources, a lot of tax basis, and we still have not done well with that. And so we need to understand how all those things integrate together, and we provide the services that we need to provide at a lower cost and more effectively to our residents. And so that's the perspective, and that's what I want to bring to City Hall to get San Francisco back on track.
Okay, thank you. Lulu, Schwartz, what would you spend, what's your number one priority when you get reelected and you go walking, I mean, if you get elected and you go walking in that door, what are you going to be focusing on? You're on mute. Still on mute?
No, I'm good now. Look, you know, it's a little funny for me. to sit and listen to people talking about being in City Hall and how the job is about City Hall. Okay, great. I'd like to have an office. I'd like to have a staff. But when you say walk, I'm not thinking about walking through the door of City Hall. I'm not going to stop walking the streets of my community. I'm not going to stop writing the Muni. And you want to know something that came up in the earlier debate or encounter? I live in an SRO. I live in an SRO because my partner and I don't like to spend a lot of money on rent. I like to spend my money in the past on travel and books. And now, frankly, I spend a lot of money on women's clothes and makeup and stuff like that. Bottom line is, I'm going to stay walking the streets, riding the Muni, checking every day out with the business owners I know, union members, taxi drivers, regular folks. And I also, frankly, I have a lot of contacts in the higher levels of politics in the business community. I plan to remain what I am, a person of the streets, not of the suites. I plan to continue to respond when people walk up to me constantly in my neighborhood, ask me for help getting in a better SRO. They ask me for how to go to the police if they've been attacked, what to do about, for example, issues we have in Washington Square Park. And my point, I will not change. I did not change when I came out as trans. A lot of people said this. They said, you're still the same person. I'm still the same fighter for justice. I won't change. I won't let the fact that I rise in political office make me forget my past, make me forget my people, make me forget my community. No. I'm going to continue walking the streets, riding the Muni, and listening to my neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. So Aaron, for you, you have a lot on your plate. You're doing a lot. Is there something out of all those that in particular that you find is the highest priority for you right now?
Yeah, thank you, Philip. I mean, obviously in this job, a lot of stuff comes at you and you have to be a jack of all trades. But the vast majority of my time, and I hope my future time, is going to really be devoted to homelessness, affordable housing, and behavioral health. Those are the issues where the rubber hits the road. And to that end, that is why I was, after several tries, admittedly, able to get our first navigation center in District 3 and secure funding for that. And it is about to open at 888 Post Street. And that's why I did the original accessory dwelling unit city unit legislation to allow for in-law units, if you will, effectively ending single family home zoning in San Francisco. And that's why I've been intimately involved with building affordable housing in District 3, and there's a lot more to do, whether it is the 100% senior affordable housing project at 88 Broadway that is about to open up, the securing of air rights. There's so many creative ways to do these projects at 530 Sansom, which is going to lead to 80 new units of affordable housing at 772 Pacific Avenue. Our recent securing a purchase agreement of over 230 rooms at 1000 Sutter for conversion to permanent supportive housing to deal with behavioral health issues, the 178 units at 735 Broadway, and all of the units that we built during when we took over the former Embarcadero freeway parcels. There's a lot more to do in that category. It's an endless amount of work, indeed a lifetime work, whether it's bringing litigation against the Academy of Art for their illegal conversions of rent-controlled housing, that we succeeded in prevailing in that litigation, opening the city's first trans housing project for trans and gender nonconforming San Franciscans on Washington Street. There's so much more to do. Mandating the creation of more inclusionary housing in market rate development, which was the Prop C that I put on the ballot in 2016. And the list goes on. And I'm sure if I was looking at your chat, you would tell me it is time to wrap up. And there's so much more. I mentioned climate change earlier, Philip. San Francisco is surrounded by water on 3 sides. Our sea level is rising. The wildfires are burning. Climate change is real. And there's so much that we can do as a city to lead the rest of the state and the nation.
Thank you. Danny?
Yeah, well, my first priority would be protecting our economy and our essential workers here in District 3. This is a moment where we have over 100,000 people out of work in our city. And this means that we need to be ready with a response. We need to make sure that our workforce development programs are ready to put those individuals back into work in such creative ways, in ways that they may need to be retrained, in ways that may need to be hybrid roles. Those programs right now, or in this past year, served about 25,000 people. So we need to have a plan immediately to put 4 times as many people back to work. And I would fight to make sure that it includes District 3 residents. We have, particularly in Polk Gulch, particularly in Lower Nob Hill, we're seeing higher rates of unemployment right now. We know that in SROs, the number one source of employment is restaurants, and that is a hard hit sector. So we need to have a plan for how we're going to adapt in our economy in District 3 in particular. And I think this goes hand in hand with making sure that the money we are spending on homelessness is a good investment. We have hundreds of millions of dollars of new spending coming online because Prop C was upheld in court. And that should be very exciting. That should be a good feeling, knowing that there's money coming that will provide relief and end the suffering on our streets. But at the same time, just this past month, there was an audit of our spending for the Department of Homelessness. And it showed that over $100 million in contracts were given out without any sort of uniform metrics required. So we need to make sure that the money we are spending is used productively. And that's what I'll keep a close eye on in City Hall.
Okay, thank you very much. So we are now about 1 hour into it. We're going to set aside maybe about 20 minutes for sort of questions that we've received from all of you. Let's start with the first one, and we'll ask all the panelists. We'll start with Lulu on this if you have a response. Keep it to 2 minutes maximum, but if you want to say less, that is perfectly fine. One of the questions is, let me paraphrase, we own a business on Nob Hill. My understanding is that the city and county of San Francisco can now spend $400 million from the billionaire's tax passed last November for management of the impact of homelessness people in San Francisco. Will the city of San Francisco use these monies to help the businesses who literally open the doors at the street level and absorb the impact of mental illness and drug abuse of individuals living on the street? Can we please manage these issues that the individuals are facing? Please help us. What can you do? So with that, Lulu, go ahead.
Well, I do know a lot of homeless people. Any transgender does. And I've said before that I have this vision based on the homeless people I know. There's several parts to it. One thing is that I think our social services agencies need to have an entirely new approach. We need to find out why people are homeless. And I mean that in a way, in terms of individual. We need to have people who will ask and will explore with individual people who are homeless. Why did this happen to you? Secondly, what can you do as a person to recover your dignity, to develop some income, to take a place again as a productive member of society? That's why I bring up my vision of cooperatives. Many people who are homeless have skills, or they had good jobs, or they know how to do things. I don't know any other ways to rephrase that. I'd like to see Grameen Bank grants and loans for homeless people to get together and ask themselves, what can we do to produce income for ourselves? Get people out of this cycle of dependency of thinking it's only about government benefits. It's only about surviving in the street day to day. I want to see that. I know so many homeless people because I'm trans, and they're not bad people. They're not losers. They're not criminals. They're good people. And I want to take that goodness that is in many homeless people and get them to open it up, develop it, feel strong about themselves, have a new sense of self-esteem, and to learn that they can make a contribution in society. They don't have to be viewed as disposable. They don't have to be viewed as a nuisance. They can take a step forward, a step up, to once again be productive members of society. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Aaron? You're on mute.
Sorry about that.
Nope.
I think the question is about Prop C, which was not last November, but I think you said Salesforce. So I'm thinking it's Proposition C, which has been the subject of litigation that was brought by the Howard Jarvis folks, Jarvis-Gann folks, that the state Supreme Court just refused to take up. So the appellate court decision stands, and money can be released. And indeed, what I was just referring to relative to the efforts that we're undertaking, be it a navigation center, the city's first youth navigation center at 888 Post, whether it's the acquisition of the 232 rooms at 1000 Sutter for conversion to permanent supportive housing. Those are going to be funded by the money that has been unlocked by the Supreme Court's decision. But it's bigger than that, Philip. It also has to be coupled with other laws. I voted for and support the expansion of the conservatorship laws of San Francisco. And a lot of these are also subject to state law for people who are not capable of self-care, who really, even if they voluntarily don't want to come off the streets, need to come off the streets because they're a menace to themselves and to others outside of the definition of 5150, a 72-hour against one's personal will hold. So, but the monies that have just been unlocked, literally like a couple of weeks ago, are going to go to the kinds of projects that I spoke to earlier.
Okay, thank you. Danny?
Yes, thanks. And I touched on this in my last answer, you know, the idea that we've got to have confidence in this increased spending. And so, you know, I think that's a real role that the Board of Supervisors should be playing. But there are some really fantastic programs that are working that I think should be expanded. You know, our homeless outreach team is, I think, frankly, at the moment, incredibly underfunded. It's only funded to the tune of $8 million a year. And this homeless outreach team is really our first response to homelessness, or it should be our first response to homelessness. But when I ask people on the streets, you know, hey, has anybody come by here recently to offer you services? Or I talk to business owners, has anyone been through here to, you know, talk to this gentleman on the corner? The answer is always no. You know, and naturally, I think with such a limited budget and capacity, those teams are spending more time in SOMA and the Tenderloin and so on and so forth. So that program needs to be expanded. You know, we know, for example, that our homeless outreach team is 10 times more effective at connecting someone to services than a police officer is. So, you know, we need to have funding for that approach. And to conservatorship, which the supervisor mentioned earlier, I support that too, but it's been almost a year since it's been passed in San Francisco, and it's yet to help one individual. You know, we know that there's hundreds of individuals on the street who would be eligible to that program, 150, 200, who are the most impacted in our neighborhoods. You know, everyone knows that one or two folks on the street that they have seen year after year that haven't gotten any better, and conservatorship is an avenue towards that. The city needs to get serious about actually implementing it and saving lives.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. All right. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, Spencer, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So Aaron from Stookies, I just want to note that I love Stookies. It's literally 1 block down from where I live. It's an amazing bar. Been there multiple times, and I love the music that they play there. It's kind of old timey. So I love Stookies. I love to see that you've actually built some outdoor seating now, which is great. And I think this comes back to what I've heard from a lot of business owners on Bush Street, but in other areas of District 3 as well. There's a huge frustration. If you can go down the block one way and down the block the other way and talk with these business owners, and there's a massive frustration on their part as far as, hey, we see this going on in the streets every day. We see the problems that we have here every day. It's impacting our businesses. It's impacting the people who are coming to us, not only because of COVID, but because of other things. And it's just been going on for such a long time. So there is a frustration that they don't have the resources. They don't know who to reach out to, and they're not getting the funding and support that they need to be getting. And so with this, with this release of money, obviously, in general, we need to be supporting our small businesses and making sure that they're getting the proper grants as well as the proper resources just for who should they call if we're seeing homelessness issues on our streets? What's the number that they reach out to? Because I've talked with small businesses even closer to where I live, And they say, I've talked with bartenders who say, hey, we had to run out of our small business while serving some people because there was an individual who was trying to harass, people in our business or trying to steal something from our clients. And so it's just a huge, it's really a frustration with the system, with the San Francisco city system. And so in order to resolve that, we really need to have these outreach programs. And that's what I thought as far as the homelessness process in general, is having outreach programs to outreach to both of our businesses and our residents. As far as general things like conservatorship laws, I am all for expanding our conservatorship laws. But as Danny mentioned, we actually need to do it so it's effective in making sure that we make sure those people having mental health issues are actually taken into our system and safe.
Okay, so I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to open it up for people to answer how they want very quickly. We've got a whole number of questions here. So let me ask you to try to keep these responses very short. I was struck by one here that I thought was really kind of cool. We'll start off, Danny. I'm warning you, you're next, okay, on this one. It was one that talked about many people have such little faith, additional monies. This is on the homelessness. Will move the needle on cleanliness and homelessness. There is a sense of defeat. I think COVID-19 is not helping this, but those two issues we've been dealing with quite a while, and we've noticed that it's gotten a lot worse. Not your fault, but it's just kind of how can we make an immediate impact to rebuild faith? That I thought was a very interesting question. 1 minute.
Absolutely, and it's exactly what I've been speaking to is, the recommendations in that most recent audit on our spending, putting those into place right away. I speak to folks and neighbors every single day, and, the universal consensus is that people want to support programs that reduce homelessness. But to this question exactly, there is skepticism after all these years. And so it's incumbent upon the supervisors, the department, to actually get results, and the supervisor should be sharing those results, sharing their work with neighbors every single day. So I'm fully in agreement that this is a top priority.
Okay, Spencer.
Yeah, so as I've mentioned this whole time, it's not necessarily about the money. We can continue to increase taxes like we've done over the past 20 years under Aaron Peskin. We continue to levy all these additional fines and fees, but that's not really the issue that we have in San Francisco. The issue that we have is we don't know how to properly use and allocate that money. We don't know how to most effectively reach the outcomes that we want with the limitations that we have. And we have a severe monetary limitation, and it's only going to get worse, especially after COVID-19, especially after we continue to have our small businesses and even large businesses pull out of San Francisco. And so we need someone in the supervisor seat. We need someone who knows how to optimize the resources that we have to get the outcomes that we want. And that's related to measuring those outcomes and making sure that we're actually focused on the right solutions to the problems that we have. And so that's what's really critical. So don't feel hopeless. Don't feel like it can never change, because it can absolutely change. We just need to be focused on the correct priorities to make that change happen.
Okay, thank you. Lulu, how can we rebuild faith in the process, make an immediate impact?
Well, I think the first thing, am I on?
Yes, you are.
Well, I'm going to say something that's scandalous. The problem is that this city is run by a machine, a political machine. And I think the biggest problem we have is to restore the faith of the people that live in this city, that their elected representatives are working for us, for the citizens, not for themselves and not for the machine. That means, I'm not saying that I myself can do this alone. It means more citizen participation. It means more activism. It means a sense that we have the ability to make changes ourselves, by which I don't mean elected representatives. I mean ordinary people walking in the streets. It means empowering the citizens to feel that we politicians, including myself, even though I'm not a career politician, that we who are their elected representatives are working for them. That we don't view them as our personal property. We don't view them as votes that we can harvest whenever we need to. No. We have to show that we're not part of a machine, that we're part of a living, real response to the needs of our community, that we're committed to our community, not to ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Aaron?
Thank you, Philip, and thank you to whoever asked that question. And I understand the frustration, but I also know the numbers, and I walk the same neighborhoods that we all walk, and other parts of the city as well. And let's talk about the numbers. Prior to the pandemic, the Department of Homelessness had actually done a remarkable job. The Tenderloin, the Lower Polk area was encampment free virtually. And when we closed the homeless shelters, that moved out onto the street overnight. But in the months since then, we've actually gone back to where we were. And that's a sign that I think should give people faith that we have that capability. I voted to create the Department of Homelessness. I supported the audit that one of my competitors are speaking to, precisely because I wanted to break down the silos. Some of these functions used to be at DPH, others used to be at the Department of Social Services. I wanted to break those silos down by creating one department. And pandemic exacerbated the homeless crisis, we were able to respond to it. Is that going to happen overnight? No. But do we have the capability of making it better? Have you read the San Francisco Chronicle and compared our numbers to Oakland's numbers, where the percentage increase is vastly more significant than in San Francisco? But I actually maintain hope that with the acquisition of those 232 units, by building the navigation center, that District 3 will see very real demonstrable changes in the months ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right, I realize that I kind of, so why don't we have, there's another question here that we wanted to try. So let's see. One question, and this one was fairly quick too. If we could do it to a minute, I want to try to get as many questions as we can. Do you align with our current DA's approach? And I'm sorry, Aaron, I kind of went around. So we're going to start with you.
So the question is, what is our current DA's approach?
No, do you align with it? Do you agree with his approach?
Well, I guess somebody would have to articulate what his approach is. His job is to charge cases that have been brought by the police department and to make sure that justice is served. I think that in the criminal justice system, there are ways in cutting edge criminal justice to redeem people and make them better members of our society. There is no place for violent crime. I appeared in the Tenderloin with my colleague, Supervisor Haney, and the district attorney last week over a case where an elderly woman was assaulted. That individual, the DA is not going to release. He actually asked the court to keep that person in, even though the court wanted to release that person. So do I believe in redemption? Do I believe that human beings can turn a page and that the criminal justice system has to honor that? Yes. Do I believe that our law enforcement system could be made more efficient and it's better to send a homeless outreach worker or a mental health worker or a social worker like my mother to somebody who is in crisis rather than a police officer? Yes, I believe that. But I fundamentally believe that the DA's job is to prosecute crimes and keep our communities safe.
Okay. Danny?
Thank you. And I agree with, a lot of the approaches that the DA is taking and the power of reform that he is advancing in our city. But at the same time, we need to be enforcing the existing laws. And I know that neighbors are concerned about that. In my own neighborhood, there's been a string of 30 or 40 burglaries into homes and garages. And it took almost a month for the DA really to respond. And I was in that community meeting when he responded. And it was mostly him sharing how crime is down across the city and telling neighbors what to do. I want both the DA and the police department instead to be proactive in telling us what they're doing and how we can be a partner in that. So that's, I think, an area where, I do agree with the ideals that Chesa Boudin is espousing, but in terms of actual results, we still need to hold both our DA and police accountable.
Okay, Spencer.
Yeah, so I think this refers to something that Chesa Boudin ran under as far as the approach of restorative justice, which I absolutely agree about. I think we need to be doing everything possible to make sure we are keeping productive people and making people productive in our society, and making sure that we give them every opportunity to become a productive citizen once again. So I think that's critical. As Danny alluded to, there are communities in San Francisco who also feel that they are not being protected by the DA. And so I think it's a critical balancing act to make sure that we are fundamentally practicing restorative justice while also protecting our residents and protecting our small business owners. And so striking that balance is very difficult. I think Chesa is trying to strike it. But again, he hasn't been in office for very long. So we're going to continue to see him, I think, try and get to that balance that we want to see here in San Francisco.
Okay, Lulu.
I don't have visibility right now.
Okay.
It says that the host has disabled my video.
There you go.
Okay, I'm back. Now, was the question, how do I relate to Mr. Boudin?
DA's approach. Do you agree with the current DA's approach? We got 1 minute.
Well, I don't really think very many people. Yeah, okay. I don't think very many people really know what Mr. Boudin's approach is. Today, I had a conference with two police officers in the Special Victims Unit, and I asked them frankly. I said, "How do you feel about Mr. Boudin's approach to not approach, but about a particular case?" I said, "Yeah, how do you think Mr. Boudin will deal with this case, given the political labels that have been put on him?" And they looked back at Terrence Hallinan. They said, "Come on, when these guys come into this job, some of them come in with a political burden. Everybody says, oh, they're radical, they're leftists, they're this, that, and the other. They have to do a job. Mr. Boudin has to do a job. I think what we have to do is, frankly, I'm willing to do this myself. Let's have dialogue between Mr. Boudin, the police, the citizens, the business owners, all of the people who are involved, maybe the lawyers, and definitely the defendants and the victims, above all the victims. And let's make sure that Mr. Boudin, who is viewed as having basically rather radical humanistic values, let's make sure that he applies those values in the job he does in the city. I'm willing to give him a chance. I've had political burdens on my back my whole life. I'm not willing to go around dissing Mr. Boudin on the basis of gossip.
Okay.
Otherwise, I don't know what to say. He's new. It's only been 2 years that he's been in that job. I think we have to work with him, show him what he needs to do, and be respectful of him as an individual, and make sure that what he does for the betterment of our community.
Okay, thank you. So I want to be respectful of people's time. I think if people are amenable, and Jordy, if people, there are a lot of questions. So if you candidates, as you see the Q&A and you look at the chat, if you want to answer those questions, I would encourage you to go ahead and do that. But in the interest of time, we've got about 8 minutes. What I wanted to do was for all of us then to just do closing statements. I want you to have 2 minutes, please. Be cognizant of that. 2 minutes for your last sort of statements. We've been talking nearly, an hour and 20 minutes. And then we are at with Spencer one more time. Okay, so 2 minutes for closing remarks.
Yeah, I want to thank you and thank everyone else for having us here. It's been a great evening talking with the other people running for this position. The perspective that I want to bring to City Hall is a perspective that's focused on the outcomes that we're seeing, the outcomes that the residents of San Francisco and the residents of D3 are seeing. Do you agree with Aaron Peskin when he says that our streets are cleaner, that there's less garbage on the streets? Or are you seeing with your own eyes that we are still struggling with a lot of these issues? Do you agree that we're doing every step necessary to help solve our homelessness crisis here in San Francisco? Or do you think we need to be doing more? And so I think for anyone who wants to see us do more, who wants to see us focus on the outcomes and making sure that the outcomes are what's important at City Hall, then I would love for you to vote for me, and I would be honored to have your vote. If you want to know more about me and know more about who I represent and my background, please visit my website, votesimonsen.com. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time. My phone number and email is on there as well. But again, if you're like any resident of D3 and you see the crisis that we're continuing to have on the street, I really recommend that you look into who you are voting for and how long they've been in this seat and what all other alternatives there are, because we really need to focus on the broader issue of San Francisco and the broader issue of the crises that we're having on the street, rather than just focusing on kind of one-offs, Band-Aid solutions, because we know those solutions have not worked, and we've failed to focus on the long-term solutions that we need to focus on to make sure that we make San Francisco an amazing city to live once again and get our city back on track.
All right, thank you. All right, Lulu, 2 minutes.
This is a summary as to my vision. Okay.
Whatever you'd
I
like.
have a vision of that the whole world looks to in terms of urban policy, housing policy, policing, support for small business above all because of the devastating effect of this virus. We need to be a city like, as I said, like Amsterdam, like Seoul, a city that the whole world looks to as a well-run city, a city that stands for certain civic ideals, response, reform. I'm not going to come here or anywhere and talk about Mr. Peskin. I'm not going to come here or anywhere and rehash the past. I'm about the future. The future is what counts for me. I want this city to once again be a city that the whole world looks to as an example of what a city can be. A city can be many things, but above all, a city, a civitas, from which we get the word civic. It can be a community in which all individuals have a stake, in which all individuals are willing to work and act and vote and pay taxes, whatever, to make the city better. We can do this. I really believe we can do this. But we can't do it by rehashing the past. We can't do it by saying, oh, Mr. Peskin did this and Mr. Peskin did that. No, no. We do it by going forward to the future, by having new solutions, a plan, and a vision. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have, okay, Aaron, please, 2 minutes.
Thanks once again to the Nob Hill Association, the Masons, and the University Club for convening this candidate forum this evening. And to you, Mr. Yun, for doing a great job. I also want to thank the other candidates, Mr. Simonsen, Mr. Sauter, and Ms. Schwartz. And I think what we saw here tonight is a slate of candidates who all believe in the betterment of San Francisco and who fundamentally agree that we need to improve our condition through constructing more affordable housing, providing housing and services to our homeless and troubled neighbors, and by helping small businesses and neighborhoods bounce back from this pandemic. And I think we are on our way there. And I'm extremely proud of the work that my staff and I have accomplished over the past several years and during the pandemic with shared spaces and the like that we spoke about this evening. And for those of you who have not had an opportunity to work directly with my office, please do not hesitate to reach out on any issue, big or small, 415-554-7450, aaron.peskin@sfgov.org. And the choice, I think, before you is actually not so much about our differences on the issues, which I think in the broader context of what we're really facing are relatively small. The choice before you and why I'm asking you for your vote is because these are truly unprecedented times. And I think we really need to have elected leaders who have that experience and knowledge to help us fully recover from the pandemic. And I humbly submit to you that I am that person. And while I consider myself a progressive, I'm also a pragmatic legislator capable of working across the aisle. And that's why I'm endorsed by every single one of my colleagues on the board, our mayor, Speaker Pelosi, and I'm proud to have the sole endorsement of our firefighters, nurses, and teachers, just to name a few. I'm ready to serve for another 4 years if you will have me. Thank you and good evening.
All right, Danny, you have the last word among the candidates.
Well, thank you to the host forum for getting us together tonight. Thank you for every neighbor that took the time to tune in, to care about your neighborhood, and to make sure that the next supervisor will will fight for the neighborhood. I so appreciate it. I hope that tonight made it clear that on the issues we've presented bold ideas, cutting regulations that are holding our small businesses back and keeping our empty storefronts in place, new programs to make sure that we clean up our dirty streets, and expanding the things that we know are working to reduce homelessness, housing, rehab programs. And I would argue that this is not an election about experience. We've never been through a pandemic like this before. I think that the best experience to get us through, the best preparation, is a plan, a vision for our neighborhoods. And that's what our campaign has. That's what we've been sharing with thousands of neighbors. And it's why we've been endorsed by organizations like the Eastern Neighborhoods Democratic Club, the Chinese American Democratic Club, the San Francisco Renters Alliance, and the largest Democratic club in all of San Francisco, the United Democratic Club. Again, I hope this is just the beginning of the conversation. Please reach out anytime with any questions as you're finding your ballots in your mailbox right now and doing your research. Our website is dannyd3.com. And again, thank you all.
Okay, so let me thank all of you, the candidates, for being with us. I know that Stan wants to have the last word and the sign off, but let me just say, let me read this to all of you, which I thought was just great. It was a thank you to all the candidates for addressing the issues. It takes a lot of guts to what you're doing, and I think that's absolutely right. So thank you for taking the time in the evening to do this. Greatly appreciated. I wanted to thank all of our participants for allowing me to host, in a sense, be the moderator for all of you. I couldn't get to all of your questions, but I thought that we got a lot of substance on, much more than the first debate that we saw on the presidential election. And wanted to thank all of you for your patience with me. So one last message, please vote. That's the most important thing, and tell everyone else that you know to please vote as well. And with that, let me go ahead and pass it off to Stan. Stan, thank you very much. You're on mute. You're on mute, Stan. There you go.
Hi. Thank you very much. As the president of the Nob Hill Association, as a member of the University Club, and as a next door neighbor to the Masonic, I think I can speak for all three in saying we're very pleased to have this opportunity. What we're hearing is discussion of a lot of issues from all sides of the perspective, and from our candidates for office and our incumbent. And the value in that is apparent here. There are problems out here that are bigger than all of us individually, but together we are engaged. And as long as we remain engaged, we can conquer the problems. To everyone who participated, thank you very much. And we'll look for you on November 4th.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Stay healthy.
Good night. Yes, everyone stay healthy.